All right, the missing Booster Club funds case study. Just a little background on the case. This is a middle school, George Washington Middle School in the city of Warren. There's one principal, Mr. Stevens. There is a strong parent and community involvement in this school. So parents are super involved. There's a strong PTA and Booster Club. They're very involved. They help out frequently. They volunteer at this school and are very involved. The middle school has sports. They have basketball, track, volleyball, and cheerleading. One student made all-state cheerleading and was invited on a trip. The parents asked the principal if the PTA could use funds to fund the trip for their daughter, and the principal said that he could not use the funds on just one student, that the funds were to be used on all students or the majority of students. There was a game the next Monday, and Mr. Stevens is just the principal himself, so a lot of parents volunteer for the gate and concession stands. And he was busy with supervisory duties during that time and didn't really oversee the money collected, but he trusts that his parents and procedures would make sure everything went smoothly. Later on that night, Mr. Stevens was checking the money bag and making sure concession stands money collected matched with inventory, and it did. And then he checked that gate proceeds matched with tickets received, and there was $50 short of the amount that was supposed to be in there. There's also a $50 bill that he wasn't sure where that went because a parent had told him they paid with a $50 and there's no $50 bill in the money bag. Okay, so what is the problem for this situation? So what I know is that Mr. Stevens is very well liked by students, parents, and teachers, and there's a very, very strong parent-community relationship between the school and community. There's a strong PTA, strong Booster Club. Parent volunteers help with duties at athletic events. They do the gate proceeds and concession stands. They've been reliable and helpful in the past. The concession stand money balance with the inventory. Tickets 78 through 88 had to be discarded because they were torn. The ticket proceeds balance with the number of tickets sold minus the 10 reported torn. So the total didn't reflect the amount that should have included those 10 tickets. A parent shared, they paid with a $50 bill, and there was no $50 that was in the money bag. So that's what we know. What do I need to know is, does Mr. Stevens follow this procedure for using a security guard to take the money bag and count the money every time? Has there ever been an incident like this before where money has been mistaken or miscounted and it's been found or corrected? Who is running the gate? There's supposed to be 2 people there. Who was working those 2 people? Was the $50 bill that was supposed to be in there, was it used for change? Mrs. Bowman was supposedly running the gate. Did her trip all of a sudden get paid for now? What is the next step? Is there a district procedure in place? What would be next? So the problem is the total does not match the amount of tickets that were sold. So the 10 tickets that were torn and the $50 bill was not in the bank bag, along with the cost of the 10 tickets. So who is responsible for that shortage, and what are the next steps? So the plan of action and how I would handle this situation, the principal has really strong parent community involvement, and I don't know that you necessarily want to hurt that or break that connection. So it may be good to talk to the 2 people running the gate and ask them questions about the $50 bill, if they used it for change, or the 10 torn tickets and being accounted for. But I also think that there needs to be some system changes for accepting money at athletic events. So my action plan would be for certified staff to volunteer to work the gate entry and manage gate proceeds. They would be handling the money. So the first step in solving this problem is the missing funds need to be reported to the district office. And if there's district policies in place, they need to be followed. Next, I would maybe to have a discussion with those two parents that worked that night and see just what happened. And then I would talk to certified staff about the situation of money maybe being mishandled or not adding up, not mentioning any names, and ask for volunteers to take turns working the gate for the remainder of the year. All staff should be trained on gate proceeds and procedures and collecting money. And there should always be two people working, two certified staff working at all times. So the two parents that were originally working the gate entry, maybe have them still work concession stand proceeds. So instead of two people working concession stands, now there's 4 parents, and the parents are still involved. But then that leaves 4 people to collect and manage money, and there's a little more accountability. I would also discuss with the district administration for the next year about adding to the teacher contract that certified staff work 3 events each year. Then that will solve parents having to volunteer and maybe misplacing of the money, because your certified staff are handling and know the procedures and policies in place, and then there's less reason for unethical decisions to be made. And another step I think would be good too is to talk to Mrs. Bowman about other ways to fund her daughter's trip. Even though the PTA can't fund it, you could give her suggestions of talking to businesses in the community and see if they will be sponsors for her daughter's expenses for her trip to New York. So how does that resolve the issues? It should prevent any future loss of funds, mishandling of funds. It benefits the students because then the funds are accounted for and those funds can be used on students. It also, you're putting trust in your certified staff who you know and trust to make ethical decisions and not leaving it up to parents. I also think putting a plan in place for a solution for parents to help fund individual trips, even though you can't do that with school funds or PTA funds, you can offer suggestions like the community businesses to sponsor this trip. Maybe they go to 4 or 5 businesses and ask them for a certain amount to sponsor them to go to their trip. And then this should provide a better management system for funds to be accounted for gate proceeds from now on. Debrief. So when responding to this issue and coming up with a plan, it was hard because you don't really want to break that parent trust or that parent community involvement, because the school really does have a strong parent volunteer involvement, and you don't want to break that trust. Some of the questions is, did the parent use the 50 as change for something else? What system change can be made to prevent this from happening again? Is the parent capable of taking funds, or was there just a misunderstanding and miscalculation? Are there any district policies regarding this? How do you address the problem without breaking the community trust? As a leader, you're responsible for the funds. So really, in this case, I feel like as a principal, you're responsible to what happens to the funds, and you're responsible for the procedures in place and the people who work those or handle the money. So in this case, the principal put the trust in the parents, and it may have led to some unethical decisions, which is why my action plan led to certified staff working the gate from now on, and more parents working concession stand, because there's more people to monitor that and less likelihood of money being stolen. And that also led to me about talking to district officials about working that into the negotiations of teacher contract. Each teacher would work 3 events, which would help solve that issue of having parents volunteer at games. So how do you as a school leader promote effective and efficient management of the school? So I thought it was really important. This principal has a super strong parent and community involvement, and that's really important for a school to have that. I think that was really managed well in this case. They have multiple volunteer programs that parents are involved in the school. They have a strong PTA and booster club that raises funds for students. So that's a really strong point and really important as a leader. The principal always puts the students first and makes sure that the funds are used appropriately. So in this case, the principal made sure the funds are used for all students or majority students and not just individual students. So the funds are being used appropriately and managed appropriately. And there's clear procedures in place for accounting and managing funds. So he has a procedure of how he collects money and checks it after every event to make sure the money balances with the inventory and the concession stand, and the ticket proceeds balance with the tickets sold. So those are really, really important when managing a school and events that happen at your school. So how do you promote the social learning of every student? So in this case, the principal has a really strong relationship with parents, students, and teachers. That's really important. I think that because they have strong PTAs and strong booster clubs, they have multiple opportunities for students to participate in extracurricular activities like cheerleading and sports and academic activities after school and during school, which lead to social learning and really benefit the students. As far as student academic, because of that strong community parent involvement, there's a Reading Buddies program through the PTA. The principal makes sure that funds are used appropriately and benefiting all students, which leads to higher achieving academic learning for all students and not just one. And then because of the strong PTA Booster Club relationship, there's funds there that can be used for academic learning and academic success of students.